All right, good evening. Welcome to the November 18th, 2024 meeting of the Marshfield Planning Board. Time is now 7:02 p.m. Tonight's meeting is being recorded by MCTV, and we are holding a live remote meeting via Zoom. Our members here tonight are Katie O'Donnell, Nick Papastratis, Fred Monaco, Kevin Cantwell, and I'm the chair, Mike Viviano. Also with us tonight is Scott here.
I don't see Scott.
Okay, well, Scott's absent currently. Also with us tonight is Greg Guimond, our town planner, and is Karen with us?
Yep.
And Karen Horn, our assistant town planner. At this time, I'll make a motion to open tonight's public meeting and waive the reading of the notice. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Katie O'Donnell, aye.
Nick?
Nick Papastratis, aye.
Fred?
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. Okay, we're gonna go, let's see, we can go straight to our public hearings. We gotta open these up, Greg,
Yes, because we have a few new articles that we're talking about tonight.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion that we open the public hearing on additional zoning changes for the fall town meeting and waive the reading of the notice. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Katie O'Donnell, aye.
Nick?
Nick Papastratis, aye.
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. Okay, Greg, I'll let you take over.
All right. Can you see the screen?
We can.
All right. So tonight we're going to continue the earlier public hearing that was mainly focused on the MBTA communities and the accessory dwelling units, but we had some additional articles. So this covers all articles 12 through 21. Here we go. So the articles, the new articles are Articles 18, which is the scope of authority regarding development in the Water Resource Protection District. Articles 19 and 20 are language to define and locate battery energy storage systems, or BESS. Article 21 is the table use modification for large-scale ground solar installations. And then Articles 12, 13, and 14, which were MBTA communities, and Articles 15, 16, and 17, which are accessory dwelling units, are continued as part of the earlier public hearing. Article 18, that scope of authority I was speaking of, back in 2020, there was an effort to streamline permitting, and an additional sentence was added to the scope of authority in this section of the Water Resource Protection, or WRPD, district. Until recently, it had been interpreted as allowing the planning board to also conduct the site plan approval in the WRPD district when a new WRPD special permit was needed, versus having to go to both the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. Recently, this interpretation, well, there was a different interpretation, and it was determined that any and all changes that needed site plan approval in the WRPD now needs to go to the planning board. This was not the original intent of the language when we had originally drafted it. So this article seeks to go back to the original intent and to clarify any confusion the language might have caused. So what you see before you is this, the district, the changes, the red strikeout and additional was removed, and or site plan approval was stricken, and we added in planning board who shall be the site plan approval authority in that instance. Again, this is only when you're a use in the WRPD that you have to get a WRPD special permit for, a new WRPD special permit. In that case, we allow one-stop shopping with just the planning board with this language. Otherwise, you go to the zoning board of appeals for site plan review, approval, sorry. The next article, battery energy storage systems. Recently, the planning department had saw a draft proposal to locate a rather large BESS facility in the Furnace Brook Zone 2, adjacent to the elementary school. After doing research on the subject, the planning department prepared zoning language with the intent to direct such facilities away from the town's water supply wells and parts of town with smaller lots and flooding concerns. So you see at the bottom, the change to the use category, we add in the 23 battery energy storage systems, and it is prohibited in the R3, the RB, and in the WRPD district. The next article, Article 20, is a definition for the battery energy storage systems, and it's an energy storage system that uses batteries to store energy from the grid or solar installations and other sources for later use. Article 21, the large solar scale solar farms. Currently, they're only allowed in the industrial district and by special permit in the airport district. The state Dover Amendment, Section 3 exemptions from local zoning, overrides local zoning for a number of uses, including solar farms, except for where it's necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare. This article will make the town more compliant with Section 3 of the State Zoning Act. Again, it would direct solar farms away from the town's drinking water and parts of the town with smaller lots and flooding concerns. So you see, yeah, sorry, Mike. It is allowing it in R1, R2, B1, B2, B3, B4, OP, Industrial District, the airport, the PMUD, and the Brent Rock Village overlay. Articles 12, 13, and 14, we have talked a lot about this. I will have to do a little more talking. I have spent some time talking with town council today, and he feels at this moment, the planning board should go forward with these articles for the December town meeting. Article 12 is the main text. Article 13 is the zoning map change, and Article 14 is the table use change. At the bottom of the screen, you see Article 14, which is the table of use change, which directs people, if you're doing an MBTA communities district, you need to go see that article in the zoning bylaws. Article 13, this is the zoning map change. It's basically the north side of 139 from School Street over to direct Granite over by the high school complex. Again, this is the air photo that kind of shows you better. We already have a lot of developed land in that area. One of the big green areas, if you can see the arrow circling, which is the back side of Quirk, the Jeep Dodge Ram dealership. That area that's treed has already got a conservation restriction on it, so it cannot be developed under the MBTA requirements. You have another small little area of woods over in here, and that's split between several existing buildings and uses. The majority of this area has buildings on it, and you can also see there is a number of large residential apartment buildings already in the district as well. Planning staff created this new section, Article 16, and we made modifications to the state language to better fit Marshfield. These changes included, we decided to go with a B2 district versus creating a whole new district. We capped the height at 4 floors. The state model allows up to 6 floors. We capped the density at 16 units per acre. The state model has a minimum threshold of 15, but no cap in their language. So an applicant could come in, if we just left the state language, an applicant could come in with something, say 25 units per acre. We put a minimum lot area in place, 30,000 square feet. We kept the water resource protection requirements for nitrogen and loading and lot coverage in place. And remember, the town zoning has a higher nitrogen loading requirement, 5 parts per million versus the state's parts per million. The language that we've prepared was sent to the state and reviewed by the state and the state attorneys generals, and they did office, and they did not say we could not do these things that we have proposed. We also put language in that the applicant needed to control, or applicants that were building these units would have to contribute towards either creating safe bus stops on 139 or on their properties, or financial assistance towards creating a second GATRA route to the Greenbush commuter rail station. And we did, once the state did allow, we did put in the requiring 10% of the units constructed have to meet the state's eligibility requirements to be added to the subsidized housing inventory. This would set up a by right price process for multifamily buildings at a density of up to 16 units per acre. It allows multiple buildings on a single lot. The applicant under this change would file a site plan review with the planning board. Under this site plan review, the applicant cannot deny, the application cannot deny. It may be conditioned. Other local boards have 30 days to comment, a short time frame on the decision, 4 months, and there's no public hearing. It would be listed on the planning board's agenda as an action item. The primary use allowed is multifamily. Retail and other uses are allowed on the first floor. Again, as I noted, it has a minimum lot size, a maximum of 4 stories. It does have setbacks, and we kept the front setback the same as the existing B2, and that's because we may need to widen 139 in the future for additional turning lanes or other things. So we wanted to make sure that there was still room to do that. And as I noted before, 10% of the units have to be meeting the state's SHI to get on the SHI list. An update on this: in February of 2024, the Attorney General filed a complaint against the town of Milton. In April of 2024's Marshfield Special Town Meeting voted not to approve the MBTA communities. Marshfield has a deadline of December 31st, 2024 in order to be in compliance. The Supreme Court opened the Milton case on October 7th. The Attorney General was requested to make a quick decision. We had heard rumors that it would be done by Halloween. It has not happened yet. They have up to 130 days. We had also heard, well, why didn't the planning board look at other sites? The staff had looked at other sites, but we went back and we tried a different site that we had not done the number calculations on. And that was basically east of the downtown from McDonald's Funeral Home to White Holland Drive. However, in order to make that meet the state's requirements, we would have had to reduce lot sizes from 30,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. If you're thinking of a 4-story building, this is going to be very tight. Also, we would have to either add an additional floor or a higher density up to 19 units per acre as compared to our original proposed district over by the high school, in order to meet the minimum number sought by the state. This area, while it has the GATRA route and municipal sewer, it also has floodplains, wetlands, and other excluded lands defined by EOHLC. Also, this section of 139 only has 2 lanes, has no turning lanes, and no traffic lights. So staff decided that this was not an improvement over the initial recommended site. A summary of the changes: we added several locations language to clarify. This is from the Attorney General in the state's comments to that this bylaw was exempt from the town's existing site plan approval, which is 1202. We removed section 1607D, which covered the GATRA assistance, and rewrote the GATRA assistance into 1608. Based on comments from the April town meeting, we completely removed section 1609, which was the fee in lieu of. This would require the 10% of the units that were affordable to be placed on site. We also added language for administrative fee and a consultant fee as part of the review process. Moving on to the accessory dwelling units, the Articles 15, 16, and 17. Recently, the state made changes to Chapter 48 of the Zoning Act. They were focused on two things. First, a new definition for accessory dwelling units. And second, adding certain exemptions for the creation of accessory dwelling units by right in a single-family residential districts. And it can be subject to reasonable regulations, including but not limited to site plan review, setbacks, bulk, height, and subject to restrictions and prohibitions on short-term rental use. This is actually from the state language. This is section 7, and you can see they have 3 requirements. Number 2, I highlighted, and number 2 says not larger than gross floor area than half of the gross floor of the principal dwelling, or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. And again, they went back to subject to municipal additional restrictions for size and prohibitions on short-term rentals.
Hey, Greg, just 1 second. If people aren't participating, can you please put it on mute? Whoever the letter J is, we keep hearing your speaker come through. Maybe you can do it on that side, Greg. There we go. Thank you.
Section 8, this is the section where they put in the paragraph to 40A. Again, they talk about a single-family residential zoning district is where it's allowed. And it says site plan review regulations concerning dimensional setbacks and bulk and height of structures may be subject to restrictions and prohibit. And also, you may be able to put restrictions and prohibitions on short-term rentals. And it does give section 1 of chapter 64G that talks about short-term rentals. It's important to note the use of the land for structures or accessory dwellings under this paragraph shall not be required to be owner occupancy for either the accessory dwelling or the principal dwelling. I might consider that a mistake, but that's what the state decided to do. And then another one I flagged was for more than one accessory dwelling unit or rental thereof, a single-family residential district, there shall be a special permit for that land use or structures for an accessory dwelling unit. We did not put in that process yet. We wanted to see what we get with the accessory dwellings becoming by right first. And once you get into multiple units in a single family district, you no longer have a single family district. Under section 13, the new law states prohibits and restricts special permit requirements or other discretionary zoning approval. And as I mentioned before, no requirement for owner occupancy. In addition, the state put only 1 parking space shall be required for the accessory dwelling unit. And if the accessory dwelling unit is within a half mile of the commuter rail station, which we know no place in Marshfield is, it does not need a parking space at all. Under this section 7, the new law removes the old definition and replaces it with a new definition. And the definition is, we've talked several times already, those 3 points. The new ADU law does not allow towns to require affordable accessory dwelling units, and both the home and the accessory unit can be rental. The accessory dwelling units do not count towards meeting the town's 40B requirement, the 10%. The town of Marshfield, we have filed the paperwork. We are at 10%. We have met our 10% goal. All these units, if they are added, will be counting against us the next time we have to go through, which is the 2030 US Census. This proposed bylaw puts the town in compliance with the new ADU with safeguards. The state ADU bylaw starts on February 2nd, which is why we have this on this town meeting. We need to have revisions in place prior to that date. The state will be, and they mentioned it several times in their meeting with us and all the towns, they will be developing ADU regulations. So it is very likely we will need to go back and modify this ADU language sometime probably next year or maybe a little later. What do these accessory dwelling units allow? It allows the creation of the accessory dwelling unit either within the single family house or within an accessory building by right with site plan review. It sets up the planning board as the site plan review board. Complete applications are reviewed as by the planning board as an agenda item at a regular meeting. It must meet the minimum yard setbacks, maximum building coverage, minimum open space requirements. It has to have a 10-foot setback from principal building if it is an accessory building. It requires the properties within the WRPD to have 10,000 square feet of land per bedroom. That is state law as well as local Board of Health law requirements. It does require one additional parking space for the accessory dwelling unit, and it does maximize the size at no more than 50% of the total floor area of the primary dwelling or 900 square feet, whichever is less. And it does not allow short-term rentals for the accessory dwelling unit. So those are the zoning articles. If the board has any questions.
Sure. Any comments from the board members at this time? All right. I don't
Right
see
now,
anyone
but
from
we
the-
have quite a few people here, so I'll be
yeah.
able to hear what folks are
Yeah,
asking.
there's nothing from the board. I'll go to the public. Is there anyone here? Just if you could wave or put a hand up and name and address, that would be great.
How about if we just pipe up, Mike?
Yeah, you can do that. I like that.
Yeah, okay. It's Larry Keene, 195 Cornhill Lane. A couple of things with the MBTA zoning, with the changes that you proposed to the state, they were changing the regulations, and you made the comment, Mr. Guimond, about them not saying that you could not put those in place. Did they specifically say that those requirements were acceptable to them?
The comments that we received from the Attorney General's office, yes, they were okay with what we had put in.
So that language would be
We did
acceptable.
not get a written reply. We had a verbal confirmation from Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities.
Yeah. Would we be getting that in writing before this town meeting for confirmation?
From Executive Office of
From the
Housing,
state.
they've
Yeah.
had months to give us in writing. They have yet to give it to us in writing.
Yep. No, I would just hate to see it go forward and have the town make the townspeople make decisions with that being the consideration of what they are approving, to have that not accepted, that language, and the changes by the state be made to the larger buildings, the increased density, all of the above.
Once again, from the comments we've received from the state, they were okay with the changes that the Marshfield version did.
Certainly.
My understanding is they would be probably very happy if Marshfield were to approve the proposed language.
Yep. And as far as the accessory dwelling units go, we currently allow 40% of the main structure for a unit, correct? And
Yep. So this is an increase to 50% or the 900 feet, whichever is larger.
would we be able to get some type of mechanism in place that we could go larger than 900? 900 to me is kind of small, is pretty limiting to what someone could do. And if someone has the land volume that they could meet all the requirements, would we have the possibility of increasing that from, say, 900 to a minimum or a maximum of 1,200 square feet?
So when we see what their regulations are, we will know better. The language that they have provided us is very specific regarding the size. So at the moment, I don't see us making a change, but I would expect once the state wraps their hands around this, they will be coming back with some additional language.
Do you know how that 900 square feet was arrived at?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
thanks, Larry.
Appreciate all the work you've put into this. It's clearly been a lot for you and for the board and for the town itself. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Looks like B. Sullivan, you're up next.
Hi, Brian Sullivan, 38 Dwight Road. And I'm not sure if you misspoke, but you said 50% or 900 square feet, whichever is larger.
Yeah, it's smaller. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I just a point of clarification. Okay. Second thing is, I believe the stated objective of the ADU bylaw is to encourage the building of these units. Is that everyone's understanding?
I don't know if it's to encourage it, Greg. I think it's just to allow for it if somebody wants the opportunity to do so.
I would disagree with that. I think it's to encourage the building of these units on a statewide basis. You know, most every town has an accessory dwelling bylaw. It could be done. This is to encourage that it be done because it turns it into something that's a matter of right. And if it's a matter of right, I object to having to go in front of the planning board for a site plan review for this. This is all, in my opinion, this should all be within the jurisdiction of the building commissioner who reviews items like this on a daily basis. Everything that's within the purview of this application, because it's a matter of right, should be subject to the building permit process, not the planning board site plan review process, which again, if the goal is to get these built, it's slowing it down. It's going to cost more money to the applicants to go in front of you folks rather than to go in front of the building commissioner. That's my opinion.
Okay,
Time and
Greg.
money are the enemy.
All right, thank you, Brian. Greg, why did we put that in there? If everyone meets the setbacks to one of these, and there is nothing, why are we reviewing them in that case?
We're reviewing them because we have, for many years, allowed accessory apartments by special permit. We've had a process in place. We've had units developed. This is changing it to by right. There were many rumors flying around that this meant that anybody could do anything, which is not the case. The state law clearly gives the ability for site plan review and for setbacks and other requirements. That's what we're proposing. All these units, if we were to get 500 units, those 500 units count against us after we just got our 40B 10%. So
I don't think that part has to do anything with it.
Taking a slower, more cautious approach. Let's see what the state regulations have, and we will address any changes that need to be done once we hear back from the state on their regulations.
So just thinking that through, Greg, you say taking a slower approach. If these are by right and they're meeting everything, they're going to come to us for one meeting and they're going to get approved.
Yep.
So how is that a slower approach besides just
words? It doesn't play out that way. I mean, everyone has the best of intentions, and then you show up at the meeting and things get dragged out. Andrew does this on a daily basis. He looks at setbacks, he looks at everything. And it's not just Andrew, it's the building commissioner. The building commissioner does this day in, day out, not once a month or twice a month. I'm not sure how often you folks meet. It's an expedited process because it is of right. Yes, the state says the planning board may. That doesn't mean that the planning board should. You taking jurisdiction away from Andrew is going to slow it down. And again, it's going to cost these folks time and money.
I think Andrew has his hand up.
Jurisdiction prior, and Andrew has his hand up.
Yeah, let's see. Let's talk to Andrew. Go ahead, Andrew.
Good evening, Andrew Stewart, Highland Street Building Commissioner for the town of Marshfield. So I had a couple of comments on some of the other things, but I guess I'll address the ADU first. I feel similarly to some of the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I don't see why we need to have a site plan review process. We're not supposed to have any sort of discretionary approval, so I just respect Greg. I work with him on a daily basis, but I don't understand how site plan review is going to slow down the process of, if you have 500 of these things, if they meet the by right allowance under the bylaw, they can do it. I look at this as something very similar to the stormwater management overlay district. I get site plans when they're in that review area. I have to send it out to the planning department, the Board of Health, the Conservation Commission. When I have a house that's or development that's proposed on a designated scenic road, I've got to send that to you. I've got to send it to the tree warden. There's a lot of these things that I have to look for as by right on any normal building permit application or other application for a permit. So, I don't see why we should be adding another site plan review process and an additional fee to people when we don't really, it's a by right process. So that's kind of my, I agree with what Brian had to say. I make these determinations basically on a daily basis as far as setbacks, density and dimensional requirements, and adherence to the zoning bylaws. But I got a couple of other comments on some of the other things, but I'll wait till we're done.
Yeah,
with this one.
let's stick with this one. So I'm just going to say I completely agree with Andrew and Brian on this.
Yep.
I'm going to let Greg go ahead. I see your hand up, Greg.
And Andrew, as we discussed today, that used to go to the planning board. Once I became the town planner and we had information on how that process was working, I'm the one who did draft it to put that over to you. And what I'm saying is, once we have a better handle on what these ADUs actually are and how many we're getting, we may end up going there. But let's see what the state regulations say first.
So Greg, just I like to hear all sides of it. And you've told me you wanted to stay with us, but tell me why, except for slowing things down. Because that's all I heard.
We could end up, because a lot of people think you can do whatever you want. We have an elected board that would review it at a public meeting. The public would have the ability to see what's going on. To me, that's the bottom line.
But these are by right. We wouldn't be able to change anything.
By right, with state law saying we can have site plan review and we can have requirements for yard setbacks, et cetera. And that's exactly what we're proposing.
Okay, well, tell me how that changes if they have to come to us and pay a fee to us and wait for a meeting, if we're just looking at setbacks that meet everything.
Can I interject one question here?
Sure. Okay.
Is why, like, I just heard a couple people say, like, oh, that that it's going to cost people more money. I would presume that they would also have to pay to file for this with building. I don't think it would cost any more money to an applicant to come to the planning board.
No, I think it would. I think it would. There's going to be a fee we would have to charge them to have our meeting. Most
So with
likely.
building, they should. This
No,
is
building.
incredible amount of,
building has a
or maybe
permit.
this will be additional work.
No, building only has a building permit, so that's just a regular process it goes through, and we pay a building permit to, build a new house or build one of these, units. Also, I believe many times when somebody needs to go in front of a board, they feel the need to have engineers there or attorneys there, not knowing how to represent themselves properly in front of us because they are nervous along those lines. So I think there will be additional costs for several people.
Yeah, there'll be engineers and lawyers who will prey on people that they need to have that. But this is bylaw. If they follow the bylaw, they shouldn't require that, and they can come in front.
So
But there are
why
a
should they
lot
need
of
to
people
come
who
to
are
us if it's
profiting
by
on
right?
this.
So what are your thoughts on it? Why should someone need to come in front of us so we could look at something that already meets zoning?
Because we haven't seen the state regulations yet. They're still coming forward. This is a new bylaw, and it's going to affect the town's housing inventory. It could possibly affect it significantly depending on what those regulations are. And I think it makes sense for it to come in front of the planning board because that's our charge. We're an elected board. And just like Greg said, I think it's important for us to take a look at this, take a look at the regulations as they come down from the state and see how it's implemented in Marshfield. And if it turns out to be a very straightforward process and the regulations line up with our bylaw as well, then I think we could certainly revisit it in the future. But right now, I think that this is something that should come to us. I think it's part of our duty as the planning board.
Okay.
This is Mac Brothers at 623 Summer Street.
Sure, go ahead, Mac.
I just want to kind of mention the fact that in at least the draft regulation that I saw, there was an additional $200 fee required for the site plan review to the planning board. So there is an actual additional fee, not just lawyers and engineers, that adds to the cost. And I have to say, with the person who just spoke, I disagree wholeheartedly. This is something that has already been given by right from the state. To then add an additional process, to me, is just another example of government overreach.
Okay, thank you, Mac.
You're welcome. Thank you.
How do the other planning board members feel on the subject of this so we can point this in one direction or the other? Nick?
Yeah, I guess I kind of agree with you, Mike. I feel like it should stay with the building department.
Okay. Kevin?
Yeah, I would agree as well. I live in a lot that's not conforming, so it would take an extra step for me. And time is money. I mean, if I have to go to another meeting, I might have a contract to line up and I get set back. To me, time is money. So I would agree with Nick and yourself.
Okay, Fred?
You're muted, Fred.
I'm leaning a little bit with Katie's thought right now, but I'm not really quite there yet.
Okay.
Not sure.
So I think, well, let me say this. Is there anyone else here from the public that wishes to speak? I see a couple other people on here. A lot of people, actually.
Grover Hensley, 49 Ashburton Ave. I just want
Okay,
to chime in and just say I agree with Brian and the building commissioner, and I just don't see the point of adding an extra step to this. It's allowed by right. Where people want to do this, the housing is needed. It just doesn't make sense to add more. We see people come in front of the zoning board all the time, and they're, like you said, whoever said it earlier about having to have a lawyer come. Like, really, they don't need to have a lawyer come if they're doing something that's conforming to the bylaw. So I don't see why we're adding this additional step. They can just go to the building commissioner and get it done. But that's basically all I have.
All right, thank you, Grover. I guess a question for Andrew and Greg. What happens in the case that Kevin just brought up? He's got a pre-existing, non-conforming lot. Is that going to ZBA or is that going to us for this? Because normally that would go to ZBA.
Right.
So right now, if you're a non-conforming lot and you meet your side and rear setbacks, etc., you're with the planning board. If you do not meet your side setbacks, then you would need to go to the Board of Appeals.
Okay.
And they would not need to go to us after.
All right.
Greg, would they
not
need
go back?
No.
No, they would not go
Okay.
back to the planning board.
Okay.
Andrew, is that how you understand that?
Not necessarily, because there was also the additional portion that said if the ADU is gonna be located in a detached accessory building, then if that accessory building is non-conforming, then it will have to be relocated on the lot in order into a conforming location. So that's not necessarily for, that it's different for an accessory dwelling unit when it's detached accessory building.
But again, they could go to the Board of Appeals.
So yeah, if somebody had a garage
You
that
get
was
a
too close
variance.
to a lot line, Andrew, that would be a
What they-
variance.
It would be a variance and not a special permit. There's no special permit process for this. So you're prohibiting that. You're saying it has to be relocated. If you don't want to relocate it, you would have to get a variance from the zoning board of appeals, not a special permit.
Right. There is no
Would you
special
have to get-
permit process in the state law right now, other than to have more than one accessory dwelling unit per lot.
And based upon our current language in the site plan approval process, because the zoning board of appeals would be the special permit granting authority in that situation, they would then do the site plan approval process for accessory.
The site
Would
plan
they have to
approval
come back to the
process
planning board?
can't be used for this because it is by right now.
I lost you there, Greg. I'm
So,
sorry.
Greg,
Explain
if
that.
they get a variance from the zoning board of appeals to leave an accessory building within 5 feet of a lot line instead of relocating it to 10 feet of a side lot line, would they then, once they get that variance, have to go to the planning board for site plan approval? Or would they get site plan approval from the zoning board of appeals during the variance process? That's what,
So that has not been covered, and that there was no guidance from the state on that particular point.
So
I
again,
would think that that makes sense. If they're gonna get a variance, then the zoning board of appeals could cover that.
Grover Hensley, 49 Ashburton. They're not going to get a variance from us to be able to do that.
Grover, sorry, are you on the ZBA?
Yes.
Okay.
They're
Well, I
just
guess-
we don't hand out variances. If it is decided that someone needs to come for a variance for something like this, we don't hand them out. We just had one the other day that we sent them away. They were trying to do a shed or something like that on their property, and we told them we're not going to give it to them. We just can't give out variances. It's a very few people that come and get them from us.
Sure,
So
case by
let's go
case every
back-
time.
So let's go back to that language. If you have an accessory building and you want to make it an accessory apartment, you're investing in that building, then you should probably meet your side yard setbacks for your neighbor.
I think that really would be up to ZBA if they're asking for a variance, just case by case. I'm sure there's that 1 in 100 chance that it makes sense to grant somebody a variance, but as
Correct,
we know, they're very hard to obtain.
correct. But what I'm saying is, if you're changing an accessory building into an accessory dwelling unit, you're changing it from a shed or something else to something that's going to be occupied, you should be meeting your setbacks for your neighbors,
So that's going to be required, yes, unless they get a variance.
unless they get the variance, correct?
Sure. I mean, that we're not arguing that at all.
Okay,
But again,
Okay.
what you're doing is you're adding a layer of cost. You're
Sure.
encouraging the building of these units, but now you've got to move buildings and you've got to make it structurally sound. It's again, although if the objective is building more units, you're adding a layer of regulation and bureaucracy that's going to prohibit the building of these units. I understand the pie in the sky objective that all lots are conforming and all dwellings and structures conform with setback requirements. But the reality is Marshfield's been around for 300 some odd years. There are lots of non-conforming structures, lots of non-conforming lots. I think Andrew is the one that can make the call on this and not send them to you folks.
So, Brian, I
Respectfully.
think we're talking about two different things, though. So, originally, we're talking about someone that meets all the setbacks, and I was in the agreement with you that they should go directly to Andrew, and he'd be able to sign off just like any other structure. But in the second case, when somebody does not meet the setbacks,
Like
he
me.
wouldn't be able to sign off in that case anyway. It would have to go to zoning board. So
And
that
if-
layer would be necessary for Andrew to do anything.
Mike,
I think if
I
it's
just wanna hear
allowed as a
Brian in a
matter of right, if it's allowed as a matter of right, It's a conforming use, and it's a change. It's an allowed use in the district, and provided that non-conforming structure, meets building code, it can be allowed as a matter of right.
Well, it's not going to meet zoning if it's too close to a lot line.
It's pre-existing non-conforming. So the
No,
standard
because
wouldn't be,
sheds fall under
it
different
wouldn't,
setbacks.
I thought we were talking about structures, not sheds.
Well, a structure is a shed.
Like,
I'm thinking,
go ahead, Greg.
to the point that they would have to move the structure, make it more in compliance, that structure would have to be brought up to state building codes anyway. So that's going to require money. So shifting this structure over to meet your setback for your neighbors is not that big of a problem.
When
I guess
Grover
that depends
Hensley,
on the-
49 Ashbrook now. I actually just got a price to move a piece of structure on my property, and the minimum it was going to cost was $50,000. I don't think that's reasonable, honestly. What if it was a garage that was pre-existing but within 10 feet of the lot line, a garage with a structure above it is not you think that that's reasonable to have them move it? Say it was 7 feet to 10 feet, 3 feet.
Well, Grover,
Go
for
to
me,
the Board of Appeals.
yeah, for me to answer that, I would say that particular case would go directly to ZBA, and they would have to make that decision to give that person a variance or not.
Even though it's pre-existing non-conforming.
Yeah, Grover,
Yeah,
you're not
absolutely.
getting the variance. I'm not giving you the variance, Grover. Sorry.
And thank you, I appreciate it.
So, Andrew, in this case, I think it would only be proper if somebody isn't meeting the setbacks to send them to ZBA to get a variance. Do you see that working any other way, Andrew?
Yeah, Mike, I have a proposition for a couple of things here. One, I would just really like to ask the members of the ZBA, just give the planning board the same courtesy we ask for on our meetings. Raise your hand, be addressed by the chair, which is Mike Viviano, and before you just start speaking. But the one thing about it that is kind of, currently we have a special permit process for accessory apartments, and all of that, has always, and a lot of this is very similar as far as the requirements that we ultimately have about the plan requirements, the application, the existing and proposed square footage, existing and proposed floor layouts, exterior elevations, proposed change to the exterior of the building, site plan, that it should be prepared by a registered land surveyor, the table showing minimum required dimensional density. So those are all basic things that we've always done for a special permit through the Zoning Board of Appeals, right? We've added a lot of these other review standards just so that we could be in compliance with a couple of things: Board of Health, WRPD, and the current state law. So it's really just by doing it through a site plan review process with the planning board, what we're doing is kind of taking away a couple of things from the Zoning Board of Appeals' ability to handle non-conforming structures, in my opinion, and a use that they technically or generally have historically been, administering, the closest use they've been administering. So I would like to propose perhaps an easy thing to do would just be change the site plan review process from the planning board to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I'll explain a couple of instances why I think that should happen as it relates to the non-conforming structure discussion. In section 7 of the review standards, it says, for an existing non-conforming structure, the ADU shall not cause any increase in the non-conforming nature of the existing principal structure. So that means if you want to do an addition to your house and your house is non-conforming, and let's say you're non-conforming, you're at 14 feet on the right side and you need 15 feet, and you want to put your addition straight along that side lot line and put it out towards the rear because you have the most space there. What this saying is it shall not cause any increase in the non-conforming nature of the existing principal structure. And this would not allow you to do that. You would only be allowed to do an addition that was completely conforming to all required setbacks on a non-conforming structure. And I know that the ZBA members will agree that we see a lot of structures where that's extremely difficult to do. And it just would be extremely limiting for a lot of houses that otherwise would be able to do this type of a addition for an accessory apartment under the current laws. And then, yeah, granted, we are adding the accessory building, but now you're turning it into a variance process instead of a special permit process, where it's an existing non-conforming structure and a use that can be altered and extended within an existing non-conforming structure, which we already have a bylaw for, which is handled by the ZBA. So if you wanted to do a site plan review process, and absolutely have it go through some sort of a board, I would say, maybe change it to the ZBA. Or my other suggestion is to treat it like the stormwater management district. It's my, paid job to absolutely make sure that these bylaws are administered properly. And I think I do a very good job of meeting all the standards. And if people think, like Greg said, people think they can do whatever they want, that doesn't happen with me. They do it according to our bylaws in this town. So,
Well, even if the public has a general feeling that they can do whatever they want, the buck's going to stop when they file for a permit and they find out what they can and can't do. So, let's see. I see Heidi Conway has her hand up.
Hi, Heidi Conway, 31 Marginal Street. So I also believe that it should just stay with the building department. And I do understand Greg's concern about thinking there's going to be all kinds of things that might be happening. We don't know. And after we also thought there was going to be a lot of that happening after we took off the 3-year thing, and that was not the case either. So I guess I don't see the extra step being necessary. I think that it can also be monitored. And if there's going to be regulations that might come down the road, then we can address that if we see an influx of it. I don't think that's good to assume that there's going to be, because we already do have things in place to limit what people can do. And this new bylaw will do that in and of itself. What I don't think that 900 square feet, I think there should be, and I don't know if this is allowed or you have to wait for new regulations to come on, is the 50% or 900 square feet, whichever is less. So my concern with that is that if you have an elderly couple and they have somebody who can't live by themselves, they're emotionally challenged, or they have a disability of some sort, 900 square feet is not enough for them to live. So I do think at some point, whether it be now or down the road, we need to have some vehicle for it to be a little bit larger, whether it be just the 40% of the actual unit, not a detached structure, but their primary unit. I do think that it has to be a vehicle for that.
Okay, thank you, Heidi.
Thank you very much.
Jay, I don't know if you're trying to say something or not, just the letter J, but please mute if you're not. All right, I guess we'll go back. Greg, we have a proposed article in regards to this. It seems like our one big difference is on if the by right ones.
We have 3 different articles for the accessory dwelling, I believe.
Okay, so let me ask you this: if we had a vote of the planning board and wanted to change it, that anything that complied completely did not need to go to the planning board, straight to Andrew, what will we need to change?
I will have to review to see how much we have to change. Remember, we're already in the warrant, and we have been told in the past by the town moderator that if the planning board comes in with 4 changes, they want the article withdrawn, not modified on the floor by the board that brought it.
Understood. we don't, can we pull up the articles that we have in there so we can see what we would need to change?
It's articles
Can you screen share them so we can?
16 and 17. I don't have the actual text on the PowerPoint.
Okay,
I will have to go through it, mark it up, and get back to the board probably tomorrow afternoon.
Mike, I can't put my hand up. I'm on my phone. It's Brian Murphy.
okay, yep, that's fine. Go ahead, Brian.
I just had a quick question for Greg. I mean, one of the things I'm trying to understand is, are you saying that, so any of the homes, I thought it was just the accessory building, so any pre-existing non-conforming home has to, he can't put an addition on and put a unit in?
No.
But they can only work with the space they have?
Brian, we've talked about this afternoon. You can put an addition on so long as it doesn't make it more non-conforming. So if one side of the house is 1 foot off the property line and the other side of the house is 25 or 30 feet off the property line, you would have to put the addition on that side versus the side that's right on the property line or 1 foot off.
So I was just my question is, so a house that's on one of these smaller lots, like we get down in, Brant Rock, Wrexham, Green Harbor, that already is non-conforming everywhere and has nowhere to go, would their only option, could they go up? Is that it? They can't move down a lot line or something if it's just non-conforming everywhere?
If a lot is completely non-conforming, when you buy a non-conforming lot, you can't do everything you want on that lot.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear. I wasn't clear on that. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm still here. I'm just thinking. All right, so we don't have the articles to bring up and review right now. Does Andrew, do you have stuff there?
I actually transcribed it earlier today into Word and then from the PDF that was Greg sent and or that Nancy sent, and I just forwarded that to Greg. So Greg, it should be on email. I do have a Word document. And
Andrew, does it have it like what's being struck and what's being added?
I don't think we've decided.
No, it's exactly what you had written.
So, Greg, do we have time if you have a chance to look through and send out to the planning board what would be required change? Would we have time at another meeting to bring this back up before town meeting?
You have a meeting on December 2nd.
Yeah, I'm absent for that one.
And then I wouldn't recommend we go to the 16th.
And the town meeting date's when?
The 16th.
Oh, it is 16th. So it's either 2nd or the 16th.
Yep.
So we're running pretty low on time to review this. So I think we should review it now.
We are running low on time.
Yeah.
And we have been doing this for over a year.
Oh, I agree. It's been through a lot, but this has now come up and I think it's pretty important. And 3 out of the 5 board members also agree with that. So I think it's okay to spend a little bit of time. Is there any way can you pull up what Andrew was just talking about in your email?
I'm going into the email now. Hold on. I got multiple things open.
Greg, you should be able to pull up your own file with the changes in the town meeting folder.
Hold on. Shared screen. Share. All right, do you see it?
Yep. Maybe we can zoom in a bit.
Well,
So do you know what section talks about our issue here?
so B1, B2, and F8. And it
You want to
sounds
be
like
two.
you don't like F1 either. So those are the changes that are needed for the
Well, can we
first
go
of
to
the-
B1 and B2 and just so we can read them over?
So B may be granted by the planning board, acting as a site plan review board. B1, reviewed by the planning board under site plan review as a regular agenda meeting item. B2, planning board does not have discretionary power to deny as a right of use. In other words, it may not prohibit the use that meets the standards below.
So 1 and 2 would go straight to site plan review to Andrew if they meet everything below.
You would go for your building permit as soon as you finish your site plan review. Currently, the way it's written.
Yeah. But if 1 and 2 were changed to give Andrew that authority, then after the word review standards.
If I can just interject really quickly.
Sure, Katie.
Obviously, I am not in favor of this at all. I feel like the planning board is abdicating their responsibility. But that's my opinion of the board. But also, can we stop talking like just calling Andrew Andrew? If we're talking about changing the bylaw, we should be using the title. We're talking about housing for people. And I feel like there's like this outrage that things are going to have to conform to standards. Like once this becomes housing, this is going to become people's homes. I think that having a $200 in a site plan review is not unreasonable when you're looking at creating another housing unit in the town of Marshfield and another housing unit that's going to count in our affordability calculations. Like it just says, you know, the planning board does not have discretionary power to deny the as of right use. We're not talking about denying a by right use. But I'm also a little concerned that there's, I believe, a quorum of the ZBA here.
Wait, why can't we call Andrew Andrew? I'm sorry. That was the first question you asked.
It just sounds like we're just like giving the power of approving housing to just Andrew. Can we call him by his title? Like this just doesn't seem like a very formal process to me. And I'm just kind of disappointed with how it's going, especially when this is a process that's been going on for a year.
I just want to make sure I get you correctly. You just want us to call Andrew the building commissioner? Is that the difference there?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
Mike, can I
feel
speak
like
to that real
I
quick?
feel like you can address them any way you want. Andrew, I don't think you
Mike,
need
can
to.
I speak to that real quick?
Sorry, this doesn't have to do
totally
with you. I'm
agree
just
with
talking about
Catherine.
the process. It's not
I to-
personal to you at all.
I totally agree with Catherine. We're talking about a bylaw and it's a position. It's the building commissioner position. It has nothing to do with me and my ability. It goes back to, Bob Wiley and Mike Clancy and everybody else who has had this position, everybody that will have this position, after me, which hopefully is a long time from now. But I totally agree with her. We should be addressing it as the position in the planning board or the ZBA.
All right, well, I think everyone can feel free to address Andrew as they wish, the building commissioner. So,
Mike, I think this trying to edit this on the fly is a really bad idea for something that we want to be illegally enforcing bylaw. And I'm sorry that, I know you have a conflict at the next meeting, but I think this needs to be something that we take and read through thoroughly, that if we are making those changes, that they're done correctly.
I'm trying to look at it right now, not make the edits this very second. I just wanted to see what would it entail. And I still think Greg, after this meeting, can send that out to us. So, Greg, we looked at B1 and 2. Can you go to F1 and F8? So F1 is just talking about the application and the filing fee, and F8 is
Actually, it's 8, the one hard copy at the bottom.
okay. Yeah, so I don't think it was necessarily my intention to try to edit this all right now, but just to identify what those were, and so we all saw them as a group. All right, so we got a couple other hands up. Jean Lee, I'll go to you.
Hi, thank you very much. I just would like to say that I am in agreement with our building commissioner, also known as Andrew, that this is an unnecessary step. I think that our residents are going to have the right to do this, and they should have the right to do this. And I also think all of this is just really unnecessary. It's something, it's the right of the citizens in this town. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Jean. I think it's
5 Atwell Circle.
thank you. So I think it's something that just came up, so it's just in discussion still. Heidi, do you still have your hand up, I believe, or maybe you didn't take it off?
Hi, Heidi Conway, 31 Marginal Street. So I just want to clarify, I'm here as a citizen, not as a zoning board member. So I just want to clarify that because we were told by town council that we could come in. And Greg, I do want to apologize that we did not bring this to you sooner, because I do know the work that you and Karen have put into this, and I 100% appreciate what you do for us and your board. And I have great respect for what you do. So I understand that this is probably seems like out of left field or just kind of late to the ball game, and I do apologize for that. But my question is that if you don't change this right now and it goes to the town meeting, I guess it's procedural, so I just want to know who knows this. Could somebody stand up and say, can you strike, number 2 from this article, or rather than have something, you going through all this? Could that happen if it doesn't come from the zoning board? Not from the planning board, it comes from somebody else?
Floor amendments are allowed so long as they're within the scope of what was advertised, et cetera. And I believe, if it's over 10 words, it has to be in writing, and there has to be copies available. If you have like several hundred residents, you have to have copies available for the residents if it's in writing.
So if you just changed it, sets up the zoning board as site plan review board, or just strike that whole sentence, it would have to be done prior
Prior
to the town meeting, is what I'm saying.
Um,
And I know it's deeper than that, so I don't mean to minimize that it's that
So,
quick, just striking it.
why we have public meetings before we have public hearings is to flush out things like this, so we can make changes without having to make floor amendments, etc. We have seen in the past floor amendments sometimes have unintended consequences.
I agree.
And that's why I don't like floor amendments.
Okay. I understand. I agree. I do agree, and I understand that. I was just kind of wondering if that's because to avoid you having to go back and do anything more, not saying that you will, but just to go through it. But thank you.
It would be a floor amendment by, an outside, a resident can bring up a
Right.
floor. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Grover, are you still holding your hand up?
I had a similar question to Heidi. Say this does go to, I mean, this is obviously going to town meeting and it does not get voted in. What happens then?
Then the town has no regulations regarding ADU.
Are you, Mr. Guimon, if this does not pass, will this be brought up again with revisions or, because I'm seriously concerned it may not pass. Will it be brought up again with revisions or some kind of changes that we can make it work, make it pass?
I have brought accessory apartments to town meeting probably 6 times now in 10 years. We try to change things as we go along. Sure, if it doesn't pass, we can bring it, but what happens in the meanwhile? So,
Craig, what do you mean by if it doesn't pass, then we'll have no regulation? Don't we currently have regulations in place?
no, we cannot use the current accessory apartments language because it's a special permit process. We can't use it.
So then it goes.
It is in a special permit section, which is why I had to draft a whole new section to cover this.
So if it doesn't pass, it just goes unregulated?
I'll let Bob Galvin answer that question. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't see how you're going to enforce something that you don't have language saying this is what you need to meet.
Can I chime in one more time?
Yep, please go ahead.
The unregulated, I think, is not the right word. It's regulated. It's just not to the regulations that we want for this town, correct?
I'm not sure. If you want or don't want setbacks, etc., that's one of the aspects to it. Do you want height requirements? Size any kind of requirements, you need to direct it before February 2nd. And that's what this was trying to do. And it didn't help that the state doesn't have their regulations in place yet. But we understood this and we figured, all right, let's put this in place. We're covered until the state regulations are out. And then we have the full, here's what we got to meet.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
So it sounds like if I'm understanding this, we could go forward with this as it's written, and then when the state regulations come out, we can revisit it.
Which is what we have said we will do.
I'm still in favor of that plan.
Heidi Conway, 31 Marginal Street. I'm not in favor of that because I don't feel as though we should be having additional step. And I understand the housing situation, but I am a zoning board member. I'm here as a citizen tonight, but I am a zoning board member, and we do keep track and pay attention to the accessory dwellings that come through. So it's not like people's homes, or this is someone's home, they should have to have an additional expense that they wouldn't have to have if we didn't have another step for them. Because when this comes through in February, it's going to be by right. And anything that you want to add to that is a bonus for the town for our protection. which I understand that, and I think that's a great idea, but I think that it shouldn't, if it doesn't go to the building department, it should stay with the zoning department. Because that's who does accessory dwellings at this time. If it's in a WRPD, 100% it should go to the planning board. But other than that, it should stay where it is right now if the building department cannot handle it. And the only reason why it would go to zoning, I would think if it would need a variance or they wanted it to be bigger than what is allowed by right, which I don't even know if that's possible or there's something you can put in there for that, that might have to come later on. That's my understanding of it.
So Heidi, I agree with you, except it is at such a late hour that making these changes are very difficult. And I think unless it was somebody making a floor amendment, then us changing this at this point would be difficult and not easy, and possibly even having it pulled by the moderator for such a large change in the wording. Even though I completely agree with what you just said. So I think at this time we're gonna have to make a point for us to either move this forward or have another meeting about it, which is going to probably be without me. But I'm only 1 out of 5. So I believe Katie's already in favor of moving this forward right now. Is anyone else ready to take a vote and move this? Well, we're going to take a vote to move it forward or not, really.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair. I apologize. I can't raise my hand also.
Hi, Larry.
Larry Keene, 195 Cornhill Lane. There's been an emphasis in this conversation in regards to the expense to residents and to taxpayers of the town of Marshfield. An easy strike in this would be if the planning board would be willing to waive that $200 fee for the site plan approval. That if it's only going to be a line item in front of the board to be looked at and reviewed and pretty much rubber stamped and sent through, would they be willing to waive that $200 fee?
So we can discuss that in a minute. Honestly, Larry, I'm sorry, was it Larry? I forget. I apologize. But my thought on the cost of it is if somebody feels like they need to bring engineers or attorneys with them, and that fee is much more than $200.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. That's what I'm getting at. Fees for the attorney and engineer is going to be substantially more than $200, but nobody on the planning board, nor the zoning board, nor a town official has the ability of waiving any of those fees.
Yeah.
They're going to be substantial. Everyone talks about, it's $200, it's minimal, it's this, it's that. What do you think it's going to be for an engineer or an attorney to represent an applicant for this night? Between the 200 and that, I bet you're pushing the $1,000 mark.
Well, the only reason
I
just have to disagree is the department still needs to be funded. So,
but Mike, what is the cost now for an accessory apartment? That wouldn't be isn't it $200 now plus engineers that they need to do it now?
Well, I don't think there's going to be anything different having a civil engineer doing it unless you're requiring him to come to the meeting and represent you, or having an attorney there to represent you. So I mean, I'm all for
90% of the common homeowner.
I'm all for keeping the $200 fee because they're coming in front of us. It needs to be reviewed by Greg and Karen, and it takes time to run the office. It's not a huge fee. I think if they didn't have to come to that meeting at all, then that's where the savings really would be. And some homeowners are okay speaking in public and going in front of us and doing it on their own. They would not bring their civil engineer. They would not bring their attorney. But that's probably only half the people that would want to do that. So is anyone on the board interested in talking about the $200? No. Okay. Seeing none, we're not gonna bring that up. I think Andrew has his hand up.
I just wanted to clarify, Mike, are you going to move forward on everything? I did have a couple comments on the other items.
Yeah, they would only be on this just so we can get off the subject.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and we'll go back to the rest. So, anyone interested in making a motion to move this particular article forward? That's the motion we're looking for, right, Greg?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we move the ADU bylaw as written forward to town meeting. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. You want to have discussion, or do you think we're ready to vote?
Oh, I mean, I thought we had plenty of discussion.
I thought so too. Then Katie O'Donnell, aye.
Okay, thanks. Nick.
I guess I'd like to push this to another meeting if we can. I guess I'll have to vote nay for now.
Okay. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Kevin.
I agree with Nick. I vote nay for now.
Um,
I'm available any night.
Okay.
Can I interject really quick?
I think we got to finish the vote.
Well, here's my question on the vote. I just wanted to clarify. If
We can have more meetings.
Yeah, because if this, and do we have to close the hearing for it? Is this just for bringing it forward? Like, if we voted this, would it close the public hearing for this? And would you have to like reopen to have another vote? That's, sorry, I just want to make sure that we're in line with.
I think that's a good point of order. Greg, can you answer that for us?
So you can close a public hearing, leave the record open, or close the record. The board can then discuss amongst itself and vote how they would like to proceed after that.
And there's multiple articles on for this hearing. So voting one article doesn't mean you've closed the hearing. And there's also 2 ADU articles.
Okay, so I'm going to do this for this moment. I'm going to withdraw my previous motion on moving this forward or not moving this forward, so we can go through the rest of these and then do a motion at the end for either moving things forward, not moving them forward, or tabling part of it. Does that sound okay to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, no board member objects. Greg, is there any issue with
No, you
pulling
just
back that motion?
withdrawn the motion, so that's fine.
Okay, so that motion is currently withdrawn with no vote taken, and we're going to finish discussing the town meeting warrants items. So Greg, I'll let you continue.
Oh, I finished the presentation on all the articles.
Okay, then I'll go back to Andrew because he had questions on some of the other ones.
Thank you. On the battery storage, the one place I had a question, the one district that I had a question about why we were proposing to allow it was the Brant Rock Village Overlay District. Small lots and subject to flooding. So it's two of the things we're trying to avoid it.
Nope, I
Okay.
thought of that, but I didn't catch that until today.
All right, okay. Yeah, so that was one edit I was hoping that could be made. The other thing I wanted to go over with was the WRPD site plan approval. So Greg mentioned that you know, it's been interpreted differently, and that's I'm the interpreter. So I've been interpreting it differently than I guess, you know, Jim Folkard did in the past, but you know, Jim didn't interpret a whole lot, you know, that well in the past. I think Jerry missed a lot in the past. And I think one of the things when it comes to the WRPD specifically is the WRPD has, you know, performance standards for all uses, by right uses and special permit uses. And the special permit granting authority is the planning department. So the planning department is always doing the special permits there, and they're also doing the site plan reviews for that as well. And I think, in my opinion, it's like, well, why not just keep it all in one place? Either site plan approval with a special permit or just site plan approval for a by right use in that area that requires a site plan approval gets done by the planning board. That way you have consistency with the review of the performance standards in one board instead of spread across the planning board and the ZBA. And I also feel like the planning board is a lot more familiar with handling those kind of performance standards than the ZBA. You know, no offense to my ZBA folks, but you know, we're talking wastewater flows, nitrogen loading, stormwater management runoff, groundwater or elevations. These are not things that the ZBA really handles a whole lot of until they're into a big 40B discussion. And then in those times, they rely on the planning board for their recommendations and the Board of Health for their recommendations. So fill in the WRPD, any fill over 500 cubic yards requires a special permit from the ZBA, but that's going to then trigger it right into the planning board anyway. So all of these things that are just general review standards are already things that are handled by the ZBA or by the planning board. I think they're more appropriate. I think it's nice for consistency of those review standards all to be handled in one spot. And that's why I think it should just be kept the way it was.
But Andrew, that's not the way it was.
Well, I think that's why it should be kept the way it's being interpreted. And Bob Galvin does agree with me with the interpretation.
Which is why we're changing the language to be specific.
I understand your reason, Greg. I'm explaining my reason with why I think it should be the consistency of the review of the performance standards, whether by right or during the special permit process where you end up doing site plan review. Since you're doing site plan review during the special permit process, why not do it in general just to have consistency of the performance standards? That's my right. I understand your reason.
Do you want to respond, Greg?
There are a number of cases where somebody's changing windows, changing facades, etc., that does not need a water resource protection district special permit. The planning board should not be involved. It should be with the site plan approval, ZBA. There's also cases where we have uses that are not allowed in the district. If they're not requiring a new WRPD special permit from the planning board, we won't be, we wouldn't be able to approve it. It would need to go to the ZBA to get a variance or a special permit in order to proceed. So those are reasons why we don't want to be the site plan review or site plan approval board for uses that are not requiring water resource protection review.
Andrew?
Oh, well, I don't know. Changing windows doesn't require site plan review. Generally changing the front of a facade, unless you're changing the overall building area or footprint of a structure or placing a new structure, that wouldn't require that's the only time it's going to require site plan review. So in that regard, you're creating a more impervious area. Depending on the size of it, it might require stormwater management runoff. So those are all the things that are going to be reviewed. I think that the whole variance thing, like all the members of the ZBA have been saying, they are not very apt generally to give out variances for uses and for other and for structures. So I think that's not, using the variance as the argument is I don't know, not the best one, I think, in my opinion.
So Greg, the way we're proposing Article 18 under the scope of authority right now, it's still going to both of us, you're saying, for different reasons.
We're just making it clear that we will do site plan approval when it requires a water resource protection special permit. Otherwise, it remains with the board that typically does site plan approval, which is the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, comments from anybody on the board? Being none, anyone from the public? Okay. Andrew, do you have comments on another article? Okay.
No, thank you.
All right. So now let's go back to the overall part of this. It seems like to me, the board would like to have another meeting, really to talk about the ADU units more. Can we not vote? We don't need to take a vote tonight, right, Greg? We can continue this public hearing.
You do not need to vote on this tonight. You do not need to close the public hearing if you don't, or you can close the public hearing because the boards can have discussion amongst itself and then make its decision.
What would be the will of the board to do? Either close the public hearing and discuss amongst ourselves, or do another public hearing on this? Because I'll make a motion either way, depending on how we think. Katie?
Greg, what would you prefer? I mean, I feel like we're getting up close to town meeting. I feel like I wish that a lot of these concerns had been raised earlier. I think keeping the public hearing open even longer, I feel like could make it harder for us to have time to review and address things at the next meeting. But
We'll definitely make a time crunch. Yes, and then additional things could come up if you continue the public hearing.
so
Right.
I think I'd be inclined to close, but I don't know about the rest of the board.
Nick?
I think I'm kind of with Katie on this. I think we could close.
Kevin?
So we discuss it among ourselves then. We close the hearing, we discuss it ourselves. Correct?
Yeah, Greg, how do we discuss it at
Yeah,
another
yeah.
public meeting?
Yeah,
Just not just at another planning board meeting.
Yeah, at our next meeting, right?
Okay.
Not amongst ourselves, not outside.
Well, obviously, yeah. I'm just wondering. It's going to most likely be at the December 3rd one. So, all right. Well, I'm going to make a motion that we close the public hearing for the you got my brain. Katie, can you make the motion for me?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Do we need to keep the record open though?
That's only if we were planning on receiving other information from someone else, correct?
Well,
Yes.
isn't it even if you want to discuss any possible floor amendments? Wouldn't that still need to have the record open?
I just default to Greg to tell me that one.
I think if we were waiting for information from an outside party, we would leave the record open. If this is the board working on it based on staff review of the bylaw and highlighting where changes have been discussed from tonight, I don't think you would need to keep the record open.
We'll just close the public hearing. Is that the recommendation?
Robert Hensley, I raised my hand. Is there a chance I can chime in quick?
What's it about?
If the state issues new regulations, does that change if the hearing is open or closed that you can?
We are not expecting the state to come up with regulations for the ADUs between now and
February.
town meeting, never mind the next planning board meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we close this public hearing. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Katie O'Donnell, aye.
Thank you, Nick.
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred.
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin.
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. Okay, so we'll take that up between the board members at the next planning board meeting. All right, what's next here? So we are not going to do Form E lot
We
release.
don't need
if
the
anyone's
Form
here
E
for that.
request because we didn't get the paperwork, et cetera.
Okay.
Continued public hearing on the modification of open space for John Sherman Estates. I had forwarded the board letters that we've received from the residents. They are in agreement now, and they are working towards finding some additional open space to resolve that issue. My suggestion, because we're right up on the holidays, is that we would continue the public hearing to January 27th, 2025, to give them time in order to find some properties.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we continue the public hearing on the modification of open space for John Sherman Estates until January 27th, 2025 at 7 o'clock. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick,
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred,
Fred Monaco, I.
Kevin,
Kevin Campbell, I.
and Mike Viviano, aye. All right, we'll take that up on the 27th. So all those public hearings are good now, right, Craig?
Public hearings are all set.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of November 4th, 2024. Anyone have any discussion? All right, seeing none, is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick,
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred,
Fred Monaco, I.
Kevin,
Kevin Campbell, I.
and Mike Viviano, aye. Staff report at all, Greg?
No.
Okay.
We can cover it next meeting.
Yeah, you don't have to have one.
If
That's
there is
great.
anything, I don't have anything else.
Okay, anything else from the board members? All right, well, I'm gonna do my best to be there on the 3rd, but I think I'm on a plane during the meeting, so we
It's
will
actually
see.
It's the second.
The second, that's what I meant to say.
Okay.
So, all right, I'll make a motion to close tonight's public meeting. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell, Katie O'Donnell.
Thank you, Nick.
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred,
Fred Monaco, I.
Kevin,
Kevin Campbell, I.
and Mike Viviano, aye. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, night.